Hello and welcome to English Flow, the podcast that helps you build confidence in speaking English. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm so excited you're here today. Have you ever found yourself knowing exactly what to say in English, but only in your head? You have the vocabulary, you understand the grammar, but when it's time to actually speak, something blocks you? Well, you're not alone. Today, we're going to talk about how to break through those speaking barriers and start using the English you already know. The key message of our show is simple. Stop thinking so much and start talking. Part 1. Why we get stuck. Let me share something personal. When I was learning Spanish, I would practice conversations in my head all day. I knew so many words. But when I tried to order food at a restaurant, I froze. My mind went blank. Sound familiar? This happens because of 3 main reasons. First, fear of making mistakes. We worry too much about saying things perfectly, but here's a secret. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They use wrong words, mix up their sentences, and guess what? The conversation continues. Second, we overthink. We try to translate everything from our native language word by word. We search for the perfect word instead of using simple words we already know. Third, we lack speaking practice. Many of us read and listen to English a lot, but we don't speak enough. Speaking is a physical skill. Your mouth, tongue, and brain need practice working together. Part 2. Simple techniques to start talking. Now let's talk about how to break through these barriers with some simple techniques that have helped thousands of my students. 1. The 3-second rule. When someone asks you a question in English, give yourself just 3 seconds to start answering. Don't try to plan your whole response. Just start. This forces your brain to focus on communication rather than perfection. Try this today. When practicing English, count 1, 2, 3 in your head, and then start speaking, even if you don't have the perfect sentence ready. 2. Use simple language first. Don't try to use complicated vocabulary. Start with simple words you're comfortable with. For example, instead of saying, "I'm contemplating the acquisition of a new vehicle," just say, "I'm thinking about buying a car." Remember this phrase? Simple language used confidently sounds better than complex language used nervously. 3. Practice speaking alone. Talk to yourself in English for 5 minutes every day. Describe what you're doing as you make breakfast. Tell yourself about your plans for the day while getting dressed. Narrate your life like you're in a movie. This helps your brain and mouth get used to forming English words without any pressure. Part 3. Embrace mistakes as friends. Now, let's change how we think about mistakes. In my classroom, I have a saying, "Mistakes are not failures, they're feedback." Every time you make a mistake and someone corrects you, that's a gift. You just learned something new. If you never make mistakes, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. Here's a fun activity. For 1 week, keep a small notebook with you. Every time you make a mistake in English that someone corrects, write it down. At the end of the week, don't think of them as mistakes. Think of them as new things you've learned. Let me tell you about my student Miguel. He was so afraid of making mistakes that he barely spoke during our first few classes. I asked him to count his mistakes as points instead of failures. "Let's see if you can make 20 mistakes today," I challenged him. Suddenly, he started talking more. By reframing mistakes as learning opportunities, his speaking improved rapidly. Part 4. Build your speaking habits. Speaking English fluently isn't about knowledge. It's about habits. Here are 3 tiny habits you can start today. Daily 1-minute video. Record yourself speaking English for just 1 minute every day on your phone. Talk about anything: what you ate, how you feel, or your plans. Watch it back occasionally to see how much you're improving. The English Hour. Choose 1 hour each day when you only speak English, even to yourself. When you're alone, narrate your actions out loud. I'm opening the refrigerator. I'm taking out some milk. Real-life missions. Give yourself small, real-world challenges. For example, Week 1. Ask for directions in English, even if you know the way. Week 2. Have a 2-minute conversation with a store clerk. Week 3. Call a restaurant to make a reservation. Start small and celebrate each success. Speaking is about building confidence through small wins. Part 5. Speak with your whole body. Did you know that communication is more than just words? When we feel nervous about speaking, we often forget about body language. But using your hands, facial expressions, and posture can actually help you communicate better, even when your vocabulary fails you. Try this. Stand up straight, smile, and make eye contact when speaking English. You'll not only appear more confident, but you'll actually feel more confident too. Remember that native English speakers use a lot of gestures and expressions. Watching English movies with the sound off for 10 minutes can teach you a lot about how English speakers use their bodies to communicate. Part 6. Practical speaking activities. Now, let's talk about some practical activities you can do today to start talking more. Shadow speaking. Find a short video clip of someone speaking English, about 30 seconds. Play it and try to speak along with them, copying their exact words, rhythm, and intonation. This trains your mouth to move like an English speaker's mouth. The 30-day question challenge. For the next 30 days, learn 1 question per day. Use that question with at least 3 different people. Questions open conversations and take pressure off you to speak a lot at first. Some example questions. What was the highlight of your day? Have you seen any good movies lately? What would you recommend doing in this area? Language exchange buddies. Find someone who wants to learn your native language while you learn English. Spend 30 minutes speaking in each language. There are many free apps and websites where you can find language exchange partners both online and in person. Part 7. Use technology as your speaking friend. Your smartphone can be your best speaking partner. Here are some ways to use technology. Voice to text. Use your phone's voice typing feature to practice speaking clearly. Language apps with speaking components. Many have speech recognition to help you practice. Voice messages instead of text. Send voice notes to friends who speak English. I love using voice messages with my English-speaking friends. It gives me time to think but still requires speaking. Plus, I can listen to their replies multiple times to better understand their responses. Part 8. Common questions from English learners. Before we wrap up, let me address some questions I hear often from my students. How long will it take until I can speak fluently? Everyone's journey is different, but I promise you this. If you speak a little English every day, you'll see significant improvement in 3 months. The key is consistency, not intensity. 5 minutes of speaking practice daily is better than 2 hours once a week. What if I don't know anyone who speaks English? The internet has solved this problem. Join online language communities, find tutors for quick conversation sessions, or use language exchange apps. There are millions of people wanting to practice English right now. I understand everything but can't speak well. Why? This is so common. Listening and speaking use different parts of your brain. Understanding is passive, but speaking is active. The only way to improve speaking is by speaking, even when it feels uncomfortable at first. As we finish our first episode, I want to leave you with this thought. Learning to speak English well isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to use what you know. Remember, language isn't just about communication, it's about connection. Each time you speak English, you're building a bridge to new friendships, opportunities, and experiences. Your homework before our next episode is simple. Say one thing in English out loud today, just one thing. Then tomorrow, say 2 things. Build slowly. Trust the process. Thank you for joining me today on English Flow. I'm Jenny, and I believe in you. Your English speaking journey has already begun, just by listening to this podcast. Next week, we'll talk about how to keep conversations going when you feel stuck. Until then, remember, the best way to learn speaking is by speaking. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend who's learning English, and leave a review. Your support helps our community grow. See you next time, brave speakers.